All right, sounds on good. The last talk was really, really serious. This is going to be not that. This is going to be more silly and high concept. So we're going to talk about pseudorandom pleasures, or how to wrangle chaos. My name is Stian. I work at NRK. If you're curious about that, come to my talk tomorrow with Vilde. Okay, let's start with generative systems. The fun thing about generative systems is that now that AI has taken over the world, everyone has heard about generative something. But generative systems have been around for a long time. Any interesting system does something, like even a computer that doesn't have any output produces heat that has to be dissipated. But what makes a generative system special or different from any other kind of system? The defining property of a generative system is that it uses simple rules and inputs to produce complex outputs. And it does this by leveraging something called a combinatorial explosion. And a combinatorial explosion is something from combinatorics, which is a part of mathematics. This is called a Latin square, and a Latin square is a sort of puzzle that you have to fill it out in a special kind of way, using like every row and every column should sum up to the same number, and there should be different no numbers are the same in every column and every row. So a 3x3 Latin square has 12 valid solutions. There are only 12 ways to solve the system, but if you expand that to a 9x9 system, you get something like 5 quadrillion something. This number is so big that I don't know how to pronounce it. So just an increase in like a few additional squares, you expand the valid solution space by a lot. And this takes us into the realm of generative graphics. And generative graphics are subsets of generative systems that produce visually interesting or pleasing output. Generative graphics are often referred to as procedural graphics. This is because the graphics in the system are generated by an automatic procedure as opposed to being like hand-drawn or hand-designed. So that means you can just leave it to a computer to keep on generating your graphics for you, which is very handy for computer games that you don't want to fill up with your own assets. So another thing we want from a generative system is the ability to surprise us or be novel in some way. This is maybe what the people that created OpenAI read at some point. We want to be surprised. In order to be surprised, we need some kind of a combinatorial driver. We need some kind of mechanism that lets us have simple rules, but a vast and interesting output space. And that takes us into randomness. And randomness is a way of essentially like giving a computer a choice. In the sense that computers don't really have free will or consciousness or anything. So randomness is just like an expression of entropy. Where humans, we are really bad at making choices. Computers are really good at making choices. Not good in the sense that they're taking good choices, but good in the sense that they can only adhere to rules, so they will never break a rule. So here we have a very simple, randomly generated thing. I have here a couple of dots pulled from like a random distribution. I can add more dots, like this. They appear chaotic. I can draw a line between all dots, and the line becomes somewhat pleasing. I don't know. I can add more dots, and the line just becomes more and more chaotic as I add more dots from the same distribution. And this is the problem with randomness. It quickly turns very chaotic and also completely unmanageable. Because if you want to, like, I have a picture in mind that I want this line to look like, but if I use randomness to achieve that, it will be extremely hard for me to like rein back the randomness and give it, have it expressed in something that is visually pleasing. And if I keep just like generating random lines using the same distribution, like the same mechanisms, like none of the lines are looking very good. They're all very chaotic and very unpleasant to look at. And that's because like we humans generally prefer things that are not completely random. Even though we might think we want random things and novel things, we don't really like them. We like familiarity. With that in mind, what can we replace randomness with that will let us control the output better and at the same time keep the unpredictable nature, or at least unpredictable to us? One such thing could be a sine wave. And I love sine waves. I have a picture of a sine wave printed, and it is stuck to my desk at work. I use them for very many things. They're great because they can produce oscillating outputs, and they're great at creating sort of noisy things, if you know what you're doing. Because sine waves can be combined to make more interesting waves. Here I have an example of something called an additive synthesis, which is adding sine waves together with different properties and at different weights. So this sine wave would look like this. And you can compare that to the random line above. And it looks, the sine wave looks more pleasing. But the problem with the sine wave is that no matter how many times I just regenerate this image, the sine wave stays the same all the time, because sine waves are stable and deterministic. So they're not really that well suited for this kind of problem. The sine waves are definitely easier to control. Like the basis of almost all electronic music is based on sine waves in some way. So they can be used for that and can obviously be controlled in some way. But the output is too predictable for use in our case. So where do we go from there? We go to something called pseudo-random number generators, or PRNGs. And this is a side-by-side comparison of a random line and a pseudo-random line. And the cool thing about this is that I can regenerate many times, and the pseudo-random always produces a line that is more visually pleasing and aesthetic than the purely random line. And this is because some smart people have spent a lot of time creating functions that generate output that can be used to create visually pleasing but still sufficiently randomness, PRNGs. And one of the cool properties of this sort of system, let's see, the lines are good, yep, is that you can essentially generate this pattern forever and ever and ever. And it will always be kind of sort of similar, but also not. Like you're going to be hard pressed to find a repeating pattern in this line that moves over the screen. But at the same time, it always it has the same like quality of it, no matter how many steps you take. And the inventor of one of the most famous functions for pseudo-random noise that we are using in graphics is called Ken Perlin, and of course Perlin noise. It was invented in 1982 for use in the movie Tron. And in 1987, Ken Perlin got a Technical Achievement Oscar for that method. So it's been used in many movies and graphics applications since then, like generating lifelike bark texture, for instance. So it's been around a while. But Perlin noise wasn't without its flaws. It had some pretty obvious visual artifacts if you knew what you were looking for. So someone created simplex noise. Same principle, only more performant and with fewer artifacts. And that someone was, of course, Ken Perlin. He kind of superseded himself, which is good for him. So today, simplex noise is pretty much the de facto standard for any kind of pseudorandom generating noise. And the principle that these kind of noise functions are built upon are called gradient noise. And gradient noise has this defining characteristic that a small change in input, like you're taking a small step along the x-axis of the line, creates a small change in output, which would correlate to the y position. So you can see this line here. If you take a small step along the x-axis, you will take a small step along the y-axis. But the thing additionally about gradient noise and stuff is that you can kind of squish it together, which is kind of nice, like here. You can take this line and you can modify the sample space, and you end up with the same structure, but it looks more jagged. That's because you don't really change the y domain, but you are squishing the x domain, which is a very handy thing to have. And another cool property of gradient noise is how it generalizes to higher dimensions. So you can sample values that adhere to the same rules along multiple axes. Let's see, do I have a demo of that? Or should I have? Yeah. Anyways, this is the same line again. And normally you would think like this is a one-dimensional noise, because I'm taking the x-axis, the value of the x-axis, and mapping it to a noisy value on the y-axis. But it could have been several dimensions. Let's see if I have... there we go. So if I also take a step along an imaginary z-axis, you can see that the line undulates, but it keeps the same properties. So if I take like a small step along that z-axis, I get a tiny change in the way the line appears. And this is really neat. And technically, the PRNG, or the noise function, only produces like a value between -1 and 1. So it doesn't really do anything. It doesn't have any inherently graphical property. It's just a value in a predictable value space. So when we're talking about higher dimensionality in the noise functions, we're actually talking about the inputs, not the outputs. So a one-dimensional noise function would be like taking one value, producing one value, and so on and so forth for the other dimensions. So you can go all the way up to, I think you can go all the way up to like 1 billion dimensions if you want to, because it's just mathematics. But generally, you wouldn't go higher than 4 dimensions on a computer, because it becomes very, very expensive to calculate the gradients you need to get a noise output. Okay, so let's look at how this the dimensionality comes into play. Here we have a noise space. Let's see, I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger so you can see what's going on. Let's see here. There we go. Whoops. So this is like a grid, two-dimensional grid. And but I'm just using one-dimensional noise in this case, and treating like every square in this diagram as like a value, and sampling from this one-dimensional noise function. And as you can see, if I just zoom out a little bit, that the patterns in this doesn't really repeat along the y-axis, only along the x-axis. So if you take a small step along the x-axis, you get like a small change in color. But if you take a step along the y-axis, you can get like a large change in color. In this case, I've mapped -1 to the reds and +1 to the blues. Instead, if we look at this and actually use two-dimensional noise, you can see that a pattern emerges. Now, a step along the y-axis and along the x-axis will yield a small change in color value instead of a large one. And this, of course, can be repeated like ad infinitum. So you can move around in the space and still have the same visual representation. And also, if you like added a third dimension, you could do like neat little tricks like this. This is like moving through slices like in an MRI machine. So we can borrow some tricks from additive synthesis that we knew about from like the sine wave experiment, and we can combine those noise functions and produce even more interesting noise. This is often called a fractional Brownian motion, and Brownian motion is a sort of randomness observed in cells that some guy in the late 1800s observed in the microscope or something like that. Anyways, the way you construct a fractional Brownian motion is by using code kind of like this. Because you're working essentially with signals, you are working with amplitude, which is like the y-axis of a signal, and the frequency, which is how often, how squished it is along the x-axis. And you can say that you have some, in this case we're using octaves. We're borrowing that term from music. And it's like how many steps are you going to take, while how many additional signals are you going to generate to make this noisy line thing. And for each step you have an increase in hertz, so you're going to make the next octave more noisy. And you're also going to reduce the amplitude, which is going to reduce the impact that next octave has on the final produced line. And you just bundle it together like this. But it's hard to visualize this just from code, so I've made this little demo for you. Starting with just one octave, it's not very interesting. It's just one line, repeated. If I add another line, you can see that the resulting line has properties from both of those lines, but a little less from the second line. I can keep adding lines like this, so get an even more interesting and more featureful line in the end. And I can start twiddling with the parameters. If I reduce every parameter to basically nothing, it becomes just a line again. I can increase the starting amplitude without doing anything else. It just makes the line rise to the top like a weird reed or something. But if I start like twiddling with both of the amplitude and the initial hertz initial, and also start doing actually, if I increase how much frequency each component is going to have slightly, it gets more and more jagged. And if I reduce the amplitude, it gets less violent. And yeah, this is like you can twiddle with those parameters and construct the type of output you're interested in. So if you wanted to like create a mountain range in 2D, you can do this. But the cool thing about working with pseudorandom number generators and like simplex noise in particular is you can like do this sort of stuff in multiple dimensions. So here we have the same demo, just in two-dimensional noise. And I can add a few octaves. I can change the starting parameters. Like if you had some trance music now, that would be really good. If you can use your imagination, you could kind of see how this could turn into like a blueprint for a map or something, that these are height curves or something. And you can create really, like you could take this resulting graphic and just map it to, I don't know, Minecraft world or something like that, and you can create terrain. And in fact, that's just the method that Minecraft actually uses to create terrain. And most procedurally generated games all use this kind of method for this purpose. So pseudo-random noise is both controllable and sufficiently random, which is really nice. And that's basically how we wrangle chaos. And so no presentation about pseudo-random would be complete without a little art piece to finish it off. So I've done just that. This artwork is going to follow like a sort of process, like a generalized creative process for doing general creative things. You start with something simple, and you parameterize it. So you can basically hook your function up to something that generates a series of numbers, and you can get some interesting things out of it. And you do that many times, multiply it, and then you just basically put time into the animations, and like everything will start to move. And that's like the general creative process that I use, at least. So here we have once again our humble line, and I can start like tweaking this line and see what I want. Let's make it a little bit thicker. You can see it, right? Yep. Let's see. I wanna make sure it gets a little taller, a little more rounded, like that. Okay, so I have a line that I'm kind of sort of happy about, and the people that have the same taste in music that I do might know what's coming next, and that's this. So you just multiply that one line many times, and you get the cover to Unknown Pleasures by Joy Division. And now you can just add like a time signal into it, and you get a moving cover of Unknown Pleasures. Then you can start fiddling with it, and you can do like another color, like I don't know, green and black over white, or just this very, very ominous-looking black blobby thing. Here we have pink on black, which is I really like pink on black. It looks pleasing. Here we have just pure cyan on black, and back to the original white on black again. And that's really it. That's my talk. Thank you for coming.